Patrick, what do you make of this Michigan State team? Because I think that they are, with Malik Hall back when he was healthy heading into tonight, they had won their last 4 games. They were 4-0 against the spread in those 4 games. And it kind of gave them the look of a team that was a more typical Tom Izzo kind of a team. Like how good are they? Are they actually a Big Ten contender in your mind?
Well, for me, I haven't seen them enough to know if this is just an outlier of a game where, 3-point shooting is that bad. But if, just my microcosm of a per view on them, they looked really good with toughness wise, getting to their spots. They dominated the glass. I looked and saw that this was a really tough team early on. Struggled a little bit with Terrence Shannon. He had like 15 points in the first 10 minutes of the game, and they were to make those adjustments to shut him down. Really like what AJ Hoggard was doing the entirety of the game. Without that shooting ability, and I hope, correct me if I'm wrong, if this is how they've been shooting it all year, I will never say this team is back. Because you just, in this day and age with basketball and college, you cannot win again. You can't win without being able to knock down the three. And I'm not saying you got to shoot 40%, but if you can knock down at least 5 a game, it's going to make a difference and help assist your physicality that they did bring today.
Yeah, they're normally a better 3-point shooting team than this. I think part of it was the scouting report from Illinois, right? And I think part of it was AJ Hoggard and Tyson Walker were kind of able to, you run a lot of ball screens, you go over those screens. Those guys really like being able to get into the lane and kind of finding their floater and their mid-range pull-up. All right. This would have been a lot better if Michigan State had won, because I did a bunch of research on Tom Izzo. But I wanted to discuss him because I feel like we don't kind of respect enough what he's done at Michigan State. He's made every single tournament since 1998. The only time he missed a tournament in his career was his first season in 1997. In that time, he was a double-digit seed just 3 times, and there's only been 1 time in his career where he was not a top 45 KenPom team, and that was the 2020-21 season, the COVID year. UCLA had bad years under Alfred where they didn't make the tournament. Duke missed the tournament in 2021. Sean Miller missed 4 tournaments at Arizona. UConn was a mess for half a decade. Roy Williams missed the tournament in 2010 and would have missed it in 2020. Indiana is like, they're Indiana. They're not what they were. Matt Painter was really bad for 2 years in the early 2010s. Tony Bennett was in the NIT last year. Jay Wright had those 2010 to 2012 seasons. Billy Donovan, your boy Patrick, was under 500 in 1997 and 1998.
And they were bad. After I left, they were bad too.
Yeah, I think Izzo's the best. I love him. He want all the smoke. He ain't ducking nobody. He's like, bring him on, no matter who's on this roster. He's playing the best teams. Like, I love him. If I was coming out today, I would want to play for Tom Izzo.
Yeah. You make a great point.
I think he's the best. I love him. I absolutely love him. I mean, he's tough. He's all that. I think he's as good as there is. He loves hard. He coaches them harder. I'm a huge fan. And so I don't have anything to say about him. This team will be there in the end.
Yep.
They went ugly. The one thing I will say I don't like about this team is I know they put a lot of responsibility on their guard, but Walker and Hoggard, I would like to see them maybe combine for 3 turnovers and not have 3 each. Like, that's the issue that they have for not having dynamic guard play. If they get to that 3 to 4 to 5 turnover range sometimes, and I just wish they cut down on those turnovers. Other than that, they'll be right there because they're going to control pace of the game. But I'm a huge Izzo fan.
But RC only 9 turnovers in the entirety of the game.
No. I get it, but I'm just saying from your guard, and not overall, but from your guard play. That's something that. But when they're playing games like in the 60s and 70s, they're not an 80-point a game team unless somebody playing well out of their mind.
Yeah, they're the best defensive team in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah.
Fact that they don't force turnovers, and they are bottom 4 offensively.
And that's what I'm saying. So it's not that that's a bad number. I don't want it from the guard play. Let that number come from someone else. The guards, they're too talented in what they do.
Right.
I'm fans of those. I'm a huge fans of them. I'm just saying you don't need – if you got 9 turnovers, you don't need those 6 coming from your starting back.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying. That just need to be somewhere else.
Yeah. And to your credit, Rob, State's only bad loss this year is Northwestern.
And that might not even be a bad law. Like,
yeah,
not now.
mess around and
Sure
make
the hell not right now.
That's the worst. That's the worst one they got. Not in a bad place at all.
It's wild when you think about that. I want to ask you guys this because it seems like it always ends up being a talking point. I think that how do you feel about the way that Tom Izzo communicates with his guys? Because this always ends up being a thing for people that don't watch the sport. He gets in his guys' faces, and his guys go right back at him. And every year, I feel like once we kind of get into March and it becomes a national television kind of a thing, someone gets a video on their phone of Tom Izzo screaming at one of his players. People go nuts. I don't think they understand the dynamic with those guys, where they'll yell at each other, and then what you saw him getting in AJ Hogarth's face. You saw AJ yelling back at him, and then they cut to him, and they got their arms around each other, and they're sitting there like, where do you guys are both played for great coaches, right? Legendary coaches. Where do you stand on that? And how do you like you would be better? You guys are better to speak on it than someone like me is.
I'll go first on that. I had a similar relationship with Odom. I mean, he would tell me that. He would just say, look, I need to know how you feel and vice versa. So it was people would view it disrespectful from the outside and the other way around. Sometimes they thought I was being disrespectful to him. And it was just the way we communicated. When you're intense like that, you just don't turn that off. And so we weren't as intense yelling each other the way Izzo is sometimes with each other. But I understand it. We would have our words. And outside people and then we got better at it because I was like, all right, I don't want anybody. He didn't want people to portray me as being a certain type of player. And he was like, look, let's just do it a little differently. But we had that same type of, in the heat of the game, it was like, man, like, get Rob ass out here. He ain't making shots tonight. Put him on the bench. Something like that. He'd be like, yo, hey, somebody go get Rob. Sit his ass down. So that's how it was.
That happened a lot. That happened a lot in my mediocre basketball career, man. That happened a lot.
No, oh man, I can't imagine going back at Coach Donovan. Hey, first off, Billy was just so clever. I feel like I couldn't articulate myself enough to get back at him. I just knew it's a battle I would always lose. But he was never a guy. He would always try to keep us in tight. So if he had to challenge somebody, he wanted to make sure he didn't want to try to embarrass you, because there was just a level of respect and that excellence that he demanded. But at halftime in the locker room, I can remember vividly he calling me out and getting after me. We were playing against Auburn at home my senior year, getting after me, and because I was playing soft. I was playing like I didn't want to be there and playing like I was hurt. And then, I ended up scoring 17 and 10 in the second half. So I responded and he said, hey, he's like, do I have to do this to you ever? I say, I don't know, but don't ever be, and he would never be, but never be afraid to challenge me, because you need people like that are going to push you to be uncomfortable, because that's how you grow as men. And we got to remember a lot of times, the fans that don't see that, these are boys growing into men, young men that need to be in that controlled environment through the game of basketball, where you can face and be challenged like that. I mean, life is going to hand you hard things, and you can't run from them. You got to go into them head on.
Mm-hmm. One thing about Michigan State that always happens, it seems like people on the outside complain, but the players never complain. That tells you all. I would worry if players were complaining. You have never heard one player complaining. All the public blow up, and you've never heard one guy say anything leaving the system. So
great point.
I take it as he coaches them hard, but he loves them harder, and they respond to that, and they know that, and that's why they take it, and they give it back to him, and he welcomes it. So it's not like it's one way.
You have to have that relationship with your players to be able to yell at them like that, and I think we see it with like even Frank Martin. I think Bob.
Rob, you know what? Let me ask this. You know why I say that too? Because it also speaks to. The only way that works as a coach is if I'm giving you a player to say, I might say, hey, you playing against Rob Dobb tonight. He's a hell of a defender. I don't think you can get off. I think he's going to try to limit you maybe to 9 points. You go off for 20, you might be like, Coach, you go to hell. I told you I'm going to bust Rob ass. And then you be like, all right. So when you challenge them that way, they come back at you. You welcome them, be like, yeah, I told you, Coach, I'm going to kick his ass. And they're like, all right. And like, it's just the relationship he has, and that's why it's a special place. And that's why I said I could play for him. I know I could play for him. I would want to play for him.